Think about the last time that you used Uber Eats, DoorDash, or maybe Grubhub. How were you feeling before you opened the app and made an order? Do you still remember how much it cost? And looking back, was it worth it? I can't answer that last question for you, but I do want to explore those first two questions in this video. Because the cost and psychology behind food delivery apps is fascinating. Not only from how they can trick us into overspending, but because as a business model, food delivery apps aren't very good at making money. Not to mention, they can be a pretty awful deal for restaurants and gig workers. As this Salon article suggests, perhaps we are on the brink of a delivery bubble burst. But first, who exactly is using these meal delivery apps? I'll admit that I've only used these kinds of apps one time before. Back in 2017, I did Uber Eats because I got a free voucher for a meal. I've never used it ever since then though, because it's one, quite expensive, but then also the one time I did use it, the food took really long, and by the time I got my food, it was cold. So I was just not really a fan. But that abstinence is not the case for everyone. According to a LendingTree survey last year, quote, 82% of consumers said they used on-demand delivery over the past year. And of that group, quote, 2/5 said they had paid for meal delivery by Uber Eats, DoorDash, or a competitor. According to another survey, this one from Circuit, found Americans on average spending $37.28 weekly on delivery, which is around $152 a month and about $1,800 a year. Yes, eating out in general is going to be pricier than making food at home, which is understandable because there's usually more labor involved and the whole thing can be treated as an experience. And also, yes, curling up at home with a burger or sushi that you got delivered while you watch a movie is absolutely an experience. That sounds like a great time to me. But I'd argue we aren't always spending intentionally to create a specific experience when we go down the delivery route. Instead, we might be going into this type of autopilot mode, falling into the traps that food delivery apps lay out for us. Because when we add up the average annual spend of delivery fees, service fees, and tips, we're looking at over $650. I think it's worth asking ourselves if $650 is the price we want to pay every year just for the extra convenience alone of food showing up at our doors. The answer might be yes for some people, but for others, they might rather see that money go toward a fun weekend trip at a resort, or a big birthday bash with all their friends, or buying whatever other things they need and want throughout the year. I'm not here to tell anyone how to spend their money, but instead just get us thinking about the different ways we can intentionally spend our hard-earned dollars. And I think that the desire is there too. If you scroll through social media, you'll find plenty of people unhappy with themselves for splurging on food delivery because it's beyond their budget, and yet we keep at it. It's hard to combat these overspending urges and traps if we don't even know what to look out for. By the way, quick plug, my name is Cara and I make video essays on the intersection of money, media, and intentional living. If that sounds like your cup of tea, be sure to subscribe to keep up with my videos. And later in this video, I'm going to talk about FOMO, which is the fear of missing out, and how discounts affect us psychologically. If you're interested in learning more about that kind of stuff, I actually have videos on those exact topics, so go check those out after watching this one. Okay, pushing the plug aside, let's start with the tricks delivery apps like Grubhub and DoorDash use to get us overspending. First off is just straight up convenience. With a meal delivery app, you don't have to drive anywhere. You don't have to dress up. You might not even have to interact with a single human throughout the whole process. You just click a few buttons and then boom, your food's presented to you within half an hour. Try explaining that to a Victorian child. And delivery apps are great at removing friction throughout the process. This means things like one-click to purchase options, saved payment information, and just great design that makes the process so easy to navigate. Every time we take away more friction, the whole deal becomes more convenient, and we become that much more likely to impulse buy something. Even more so when we're hungry. Studies actually show that we have less impulse control when we feel hunger. We are likely to spend more money if we feel hungry, which only further helps our meal delivery app friends who want us to overspend. It's like the old advice about not grocery shopping when you're hungry because you'll end up buying way more stuff than you need. I know I do that too often. And delivery apps are the same way, except now it's like having a grocery store, a mall, and a main street of restaurants in your pocket 24/7. And look, from an evolutionary standpoint, it kind of makes sense that we crave convenience this much. Conserving energy was key to human survival for most of our existence. In In other words, we are predisposed to laziness. Like, have you ever gone to a zoo and watched the lions or gone on a safari? Lions are often just lounging around napping all day. Fun fact, according to the Atlanta Zoo, they sleep up to 20 hours a day. All this to say that I bet you if lions had opposable thumbs, they would be racking up DoorDash debt like you won't believe. And with us humans loving convenience, of course, industries of convenience have popped up. The newest wave arguably emerged during the pandemic, which happens to be when we see an enormous spike in food delivery. As this McKinsey article explains, food delivery's US market alone doubled during the COVID-19 pandemic, which makes total sense because during the pandemic, restaurants were closed, people were staying at home. Food delivery was a way for many businesses to stay alive. The thing is, once we're used to something, it's really hard to get out of that routine. When you know that the option is there to click a button and have food appear on your doorstep, it's hard to resist the temptation. Even if you know that the more convenient delivery is way pricier than just picking up the food yourself, as this Finance Buzz chart shows nicely. But I get it, life can get busy. I do not think that convenience is this inherently evil thing. In many ways, I think it can be such a saving grace. And honestly, I've been there before. When you've got a million things on your to-do list, you're trying your best to get through everything, and then whoops, it's dinner time and you're starving. So you overspend on takeout or delivery because you don't have time to cook or plan ahead. I genuinely hate that feeling of having to-do lists everywhere and just feeling like I have no idea how I'm going to get all of that stuff done. For me, it feels like this dark cloud that's hanging over my head to the point where sometimes I feel so overwhelmed that I just freeze. Like I procrastinate or I spend so much time trying to create the perfect schedule for me. That awful feeling that I have had in the past is exactly why I started using Motion, which also happens to be today's sponsor. Motion has been a game changer for me as a content creator and honestly just someone who's juggling a lot of different tasks all the time. And here's why. Motion has this AI calendar assistant that takes all of the different tasks and meetings that you have and then plans your day out for you. It automatically organizes my day so that I can stay on top of everything from writing and posting videos to checking email to making sure that I have time to eat and I'm not in some last minute scramble for food. I personally love time blocking as a productivity hack for myself, but before Motion, I wasn't using it consistently because it was so much work. Every day I would make a new time blocking schedule only for it to get messed up because of some meeting rescheduling or because I didn't get to something on time. But Motion saves me time and mental load by moving my tasks based on priorities and commitments like meeting reschedules, finding spaces in my calendar. I can snooze tasks that I want to push back, and most importantly, it gives me an actionable plan so I'm not spending all my energy trying to figure out how I'm going to get something done. I'm instead just getting it done. I also love Motion's project functionality, where I can make a project template for my video essays that follow the same tasks every time. Now I know when I need to be wrapping up scripting, when the video will likely go live, and I can turn on auto schedule for the tasks so they go straight into my calendar. No other apps do this. If you want to try Motion yourself and see how much time and mental load it can save you, right now you can start an exclusive 7-day free trial of Motion using the link in my description below. And thank you so much to Motion for sponsoring today's video. All right, last thing that I will mention about convenience is that we as humans experience something known as present bias. This is our tendency to settle for smaller payoffs in the present versus waiting for larger payoffs in the future. When it comes to food delivery, when you're hungry after a long day, it feels so much easier to order delivery even if you know cooking would save you money. In that moment, the immediate satisfaction of getting food delivered outweighs the larger payoff of saving, say, $30 if you'd cooked instead. Even though, say you ordered delivery twice a week, that extra $60 would land you at over $3,000 a year. And yes, long term, plug that into a compound interest calculator at 8% growth, and we see that that would leave you with nearly $42,000 in 10 years. That is a huge long-term payoff that could get you a house down payment, pay for a master's degree, help fund your retirement. But because those long-term payoffs feel abstract in the present, we often lean toward the more convenient, more tangible payoff of delivery right now. Side note, I do want to call out that food delivery services, especially grocery delivery services, can be really positively impactful for people who live in food deserts. As Brookings Institute breaks down, they found that, quote, 90% of people living in low-income, low-access tracts have at least one digital food access option. I've been thinking about making an entire video essay that goes into the details of the economics of food deserts, so if that's something that you do want to see and you want to learn more about, let me know in the comments below. But all right, moving on to the next tactic that food delivery apps use to trick us into overspending, and that is subscriptions. We live in a subscription economy these days, and I'm not against it. I pay for a variety of subscriptions myself. But one type of subscription that I kind of refuse to pay for is the type of subscription that simply gives you the honor of paying the company more money at a slightly discounted rate. We saw this with some of the celebrity-owned businesses in my video on de-influencing celebrity brands, companies like Savage X Fenty and Fabletics, where you're giving them money monthly for the honor of giving them more money. The thing is, it works because it incentivizes us to buy more from them because we feel like we have to. We're already investing this money with them, might as well use the perks. It's like dragging yourself to the gym because you pay for an expensive gym membership, except it would be like if you had to pay for the gym every time. Also, that one's a little more positive. But look at the top meal delivery apps, Grubhub, DoorDash, Uber Eats. They all offer subscriptions around $10 a month. The perks aren't that you get free food or anything, but you can save on delivery fees and pay lower service fees. You could rationalize that the subscription cost really saves you money if you deliver enough over a month, but then again, would you even need to rationalize if you didn't feel the pressure of the subscription in the first place? This type of discount mentality is a subtle way many businesses get us to spend more with them. I made a whole video on the topic about how discounts keep you poor, so if you want to learn more about that, go check out that video. And the subscription discount isn't the only discount that these apps leverage to get you hooked. There's this whole world of gamified discounts and really a gamification of spending. If you have any meal delivery app on your phone with notifications on, you are probably bombarded with push notifications all day long. It feels like a clingy boyfriend texting you all day, asking you if you're hungry, if you want to hang out, if you want to use the discount code Feelin' Hungry for 10% off. Not to mention the rewards points you can rack up from buying often enough or limited time offers that prey on our fear of missing out. FOMO, by the way, another video on my channel if you want to check it out. All of these techniques, from the convenience trap to taking advantage of hunger and present bias to gamification and subscription models, are all ways that these meal delivery apps are getting us to dish out more money than we can often afford. We're stretching our budgets in ways that we might not always want to. So with that in mind, who's benefiting from this? Oddly enough, I would argue that there are no real winners in this game of food delivery app. Instead, I think that this industry could be described as both exploitative and unsustainable. Let me explain. There are four main stakeholders involved in the meal delivery app ecosystem: the app itself, the customer, the restaurant, and the delivery worker. But like I said, none of these groups are really winning. Okay, except for maybe CEOs like DoorDash's, who supposedly had the highest Silicon Valley salary in 2020 at $413 million. We already know that customers are overspending against their budgets, and you probably have heard stories about how these food delivery apps aren't great for restaurants. But I know for myself, I did not realize how bad they really were for restaurants until I started doing research for this video. Going back to that McKinsey article we looked at earlier, we see that, quote, restaurants' traditional profit margins of 7 to 22% make covering the platform's delivery commissions, roughly 15 to 30%, unsustainable as delivery orders become a larger part of a restaurant's business. I did a double take and had to do some extra digging after reading that quote because I was dumbfounded. Like, did they mean that there are times where the restaurant isn't just making less money on a delivery order, but they're actually losing money, as in they're making negative money? And unfortunately, it's correct. These restaurants are in a really tough spot because with so many people using delivery apps these days, no one wants to feel like they're missing the train going somewhere important. Restaurants might be concerned that if they don't keep up with the changing ways we eat, no one will know about them, and that might be worse than losing money on the apps. And like we mentioned earlier, during the pandemic, delivery did become a lifeline for many restaurants. So for some, the exploitative setup might have just been a way to survive. For a great visualization of this, McKinsey has this awesome breakdown of what's paid for by the customer and then how much ends up going to the final profit margin for the restaurant. As for the delivery workers like the DoorDashers, the situation is also quite grim. Since we are on a roll with visualizations, here's one from the Washington Post that breaks down different delivery apps versus restaurant pickup and shows how much money is going into our different stakeholders. Delivery worker payouts don't amount to a ton, especially when you consider that picking up and delivering food can take at least half an hour and that you're dealing with expenses like paying for your own car or bike maintenance, gas bills, and health insurance. So you might be thinking, okay, delivery costs more for customers, makes restaurants way less money, and the gig workers involved are struggling too. But the apps The apps must be making a killing. And alas, no. That is what is crazy in all of this. As Salon writes, quote, according to a 2024 analysis from the Financial Times, leading online food delivery groups in Europe and the US have racked up more than $20 billion in combined operating losses since they went public, reportedly leaving investors queasy at the idea of funding more loss. Meal delivery apps like Uber Eats and DoorDash, they aren't technically profitable. Instead, they've been able to expand off of venture capital money. And while some are starting to see an increase in their revenues, from a business perspective, I don't see how any of this is sustainable. Restaurants are the source of product here, right? And right now, the current profit margins of this model just aren't working. Restaurants might continue trying it in the short term, but I don't see how long term, if they're operating at a loss by partnering with these delivery apps, how they can keep going. They'd either have to opt out or go out of business. I would love to be proven wrong, but I think as the prices currently are, I don't see how this model can work for everyone. But ultimately, I think for the models to truly work, the cost would need to be passed on to customers. So far, venture capital has allowed us to essentially subsidize the cost of convenience. The New York Times calls it the millennial lifestyle subsidy. As companies look for more profitability and prices rise, it's going to be that much more important that we pay attention to the ways that these apps are going to get us to overspend. Convenience is absolutely tempting, and the idea of your favorite restaurant's food showing up at your door sounds amazing. But being intentional with our money means not just focusing on the immediate payoffs, but also the long-term consequences for ourselves and for others. Whether it's redirecting some of that delivery budget toward future goals or supporting local businesses directly, small changes can have a big impact. But what do you think? Are you a big fan of these meal delivery services? And if so, do you feel like they've stretched your budget over time, or do you feel like you've managed to keep it in line? And zoomed out, what do you think about these services and the business models in general? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below and what video topics you would like to see me cover next. Thank you so much to my patrons on Patreon and those on Buy Me a Coffee for supporting this channel. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already to keep up with my videos, and just thank you guys for watching. I appreciate it, and I'll see you next time. Bye.